So today we are going to talk about the 10 wildest recruiting stories for the 2019 class, as well as 5 takeaways from Oklahoma's 2019 recruiting class. And all that's coming up after the bump.
What do you mean you don't subscribe to my son's YouTube channel?
Mama, no!
Just snap the damn ball, RJ.
What's up, kid folk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. So it's OU related, college football related, sports related. We have a good time. And today we're going to talk about the 10 wildest recruiting stories for the 2019 class and 5 takeaways for Oklahoma's 2019 class. So let's talk about those 10 wildest stories first. Okay, so that first one has to be Mack Brown flipping Florida State commit Sam Howell to North Carolina and then getting him to sign. Now, this is awesome for 2 reasons. One, Willie Taggart might be on the hot seat after an early signing day, which is ridiculous because Florida State ended up with the number 14 ranked recruiting class in the country, but it felt like there were more kids that decommitted than committed, and then it was a really bad look to get a blue chip recruit like Sam Howell decide to flip his commitment to North Carolina after Mack Brown basically just got off of a studio set for College Football Live, or whatever it is ESPN's calling it now, to steal your girl, and in this case, the quarterback for Florida State. This is also on top of my next favorite recruiting story, which is Return of the Mack is the Mack Brown marketing slogan for UNC. You have to use it. The man's name is Mack, and he's coming back. You have to use it. But Mack Brown apparently told 99.9 The Fan that he's never actually heard Mark Morrison's Return of the Mack song. And if you're one of these people, you're lame, because we don't deal with lames here. And if you haven't heard Return of the Mack, this is YouTube. Use the search bar. Go look for Return of the Mack on YouTube, listen to it, bounce to it, understand that this is how a lot of folks got down in the 90s. And for Mack Brown to have lived this long and have been a college football coach for this long and not know Return of the Mack is egregious and foul, and it makes the flip commit of Sam Howell look even worse for Willie Taggart, because honestly, how is it that Willie Taggart's doing a worse job of recruiting to Florida State than he did to Oregon? That's just not regular. The next story for me has to be Florida getting the Chucky Doll trio. Now look, I understand why they had the Chucky Dolls out, because Dominic Easley started out 2013, brought Chucky to practice, thought that Chucky was more of a comedy than a horror film, which tells you all you need to know about him. But Chucky was the thing that was passed along from player to player, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, and then to the entire team with the Florida Gators, and it has made it through several coaches, and it made its way to the Lakeland Dreadnoughts, who have some prize, really great recruits, and all of them went to Florida, which makes it a great day for Florida. But also, they all had Chucky in their laps while they're talking on national television to ESPN, fielding questions about the process, fielding questions about why they chose Florida, all while Chucky sits there in their lap looking menacingly at the camera, staring at all of us. I rather like being that uncomfortable on early signing day, so I would encourage more young bloods to go out there and bring their favorite horror doll to their signing day. Maybe even wear a Mike Myers mask. I don't know. Horror film Mike Myers, not Austin Powers Mike Myers, for those of you that want to be funny. And if you haven't seen Baby Driver, you should see it. It's got a great Mike Myers joke in it. Okay, so then there's the story about Nick Saban getting up on the podium, talking about his #1 overall 2019 class that's full of studs, and saying, you know, we got a lot of puppies, and just because they got big feet doesn't mean they're going to be the biggest dog on the block. Talk about your wet blanket. Is Nick Saban ever happy about anything at all when he's on that podium? I don't think so. I think he just likes to throw shade at his players, at his coaches, and particularly at the media, and he chose that as a place to do it. Following the puppy dogs comment is also Trey Sanders, who eventually signs his national letter of intent to be running back at Alabama and says with a straight face, I expect to compete for the Heisman Trophy as a freshman at Alabama as running back. Yo, #1, you got some good running backs in front of you, and if you can get in front of them, please, go ahead, do it. I mean, the world is your oyster, apparently, because you think you're going to win the Heisman Trophy as a true freshman at Alabama when they got all of 2 Heisman Trophy winners in the history of Alabama. Now, they both played running back, but quite honestly, the best quarterback ever to come through Alabama got beat out of the Heisman Trophy. So if Trey Sanders can do it, more power to him. But yo, that quote is going to follow you around for a very long time, Trey. And then we got Dax Hill flipping his commitment again. Now, he flipped his commitment on the night of the Heisman Trophy ceremony from Michigan, where he'd been committed for 2.5 months, to Alabama. I was under the impression that he's going to Alabama. Most folks were under the impression that he's going to Alabama because he's the #1 safety in the country, and he does what he wants. But apparently what he wanted was to flip back to Michigan, because on signing day, my man's signed his national letter of intent, sent it on to Ann Arbor and Jim Harbaugh and Don Brown, where he's apparently going to be a Michigan man. It's a really weird story because Dax Hill doesn't really talk a lot, and when he was talking, he was primarily talking to the folks over there at Michigan Insider. Air conditioner came on. I gotta go turn that off right quick. For those of y'all that don't know, when the air conditioner comes on, it really muffles up the sound and people yell about the sound. I care about the sound. I don't want to hear people yell about the sound. What else was I gonna talk about? Ah, yeah, Jane Hazelwood, who didn't sign much of anything yesterday to public knowledge. I mean, he might have. We don't really know. Didn't commit anywhere to public knowledge. I mean, he might have. We don't really know. We do know that all the crystal balls flipped from Miami to Oklahoma on early signing day for Jaden Hazelwood. That is a big story. It is the leading story because that is the most highly sought after recruit that hasn't signed or officially or publicly signed a national letter of intent. He's going to announce on January 5th on television like a lot of other dudes. This is interesting to me if for no other reason than Jaden Hazelwood has an opportunity to join a 2019 class at Oklahoma that could make it the best wide receiving group that the Sooners have ever put together, and that's really heady company when you would think about it. But if you got Theo Weiss and Trajan Bridges and Jaden Hazelwood alongside Austin Stogner and then Spencer Rattler spinning it to him, you're really, really good in the passing game. So now let's talk about the 5 takeaways from Oklahoma's signing day. The first one is Lincoln Riley deserves his own spinoff of Glengarry Glen Ross because my man knows his ABCs. Always be closing. 4 defensive recruits in 4 days. 5 total in 4 days. You got the #1 JUCO running back in the country who looks a lot like a Monstar because he's bigger than the folks chasing him, which ain't regular at that position. And then you got Marcus Stripling on the back end, who is an outstanding defensive end, the kind of guy that could slide in and play some 3 technique for you because he's just that big and he's just that fast. You also got JUCO defensive end LaRon Stokes, who is one of the top 5 at his position in the JUCO college ranks and really wanted to be at Oklahoma. You also picked up Jeremiah Cradell, who threw the horns down because he understands, even in California, that plays with the Oklahoma audience, and he got the coolest reaction out of Lincoln Riley once he did that. Just tells you everything you need to know about Lincoln Riley. And you also picked up Ty DeArmond, who is a sleeper for a lot of folks. He's not my sleeper. I think Derek Green is that guy for me. But if you watch Ty DeArmond's film, you can see a guy with a high football IQ, sees the whole field, and knows how to wrap up and tackle. That's what you want on the back end for this class to help out with a defense that is going to need all the help it can get in 2019. The next takeaway is that Lincoln Riley didn't need a coordinator to get it done. Him and his assistant coaches walked into these in-home visits and closed the deal. That is not regular either, because there's not a lot of folks that would fire their defensive coordinator and basically become the lead defensive recruiter as an offensive play caller and then pull a guy like Jeremiah Cradell, pull a guy like Ty DeArmond, pull a guy like Marcus Stripling. I mean, it's speaking volumes as to who Lincoln Riley is and the message that he is sending forth ahead of a college football playoff, no less. The next takeaway is that the defensive backs and defensive linemen were clearly a priority for Oklahoma. 5 defensive linemen, 5 defensive backs. And we all know that on the defensive side of the ball, Oklahoma has been getting pushed around on the defensive line and can't keep the top on the defense, and they've taken huge steps to fix that with talent. Now we'll see what they can do to fix it with scheme, with who the defense coordinator could or could not be come 2019. Then number 4 would be that Riley loves recruiting. We saw evidence of this when Jeremiah Cradell committed because you got that cool reaction, but also the way that he talks about the class, the way that he talks about getting to know the families, the way that he talks about just going door to door like he's doing, getting on planes, going to in-home visits, going to Washington, going to California, going to Texas. He loves recruiting, which leads me to the last takeaway. That's not something the NFL can offer him, right? They can offer him money, but he's going to get just as much at Oklahoma. They can't offer him the job security because getting 10-year, 7-year deals, while you can do that kind of stuff in college, can't really do that kind of stuff in the NFL. And you can't offer this dude the opportunity to walk into a teenager's bedroom, to walk into a teenager's living room and say, do you want to play football for me at Oklahoma? This is why I think you should. Because when you get to the NFL, you're dealing with adults. You're dealing with grown men with families of their own who ain't got time to listen to your rah-rah speech. But if you're a rah-rah speech kind of guy, college football is where you live and breathe. It's a very select few who are good at recruiting and also love recruiting. And Lincoln Riley is that dude. And Oklahoma should count its blessings for that dude being its head coach. All right, that's it for me. Deuces.